Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Welcome in on a Friday morning. I have to begin a Football Friday show by doing something unusual. I have to praise the Southeastern Conference. I know. 20 years we've been beating up on the SEC. And as PK says, it's safe. They're on the other side of the country. Say something negative about a local person and then go to practice. That's a different deal, right? But now I have to say something positive about the SEC on the other side of the country. They did it. They did it right. And then they added a little flourish to the end, and they did it right again. I actually owe the SEC 2 compliments. It's not easy. I don't feel good about myself, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. The SEC finally, after decades of avoiding it. I remember when it was a 10-team league and they only played 6 league games. They used to run from each other. They've always done it. It's in their DNA. But they finally approved and announced yesterday the beginning in 2026, so not this season that will commence here, tomorrow, but next year, they're going to play 9 conference games. I know, right? Same as the Big Ten, same as the Big 12. What are we going to complain about? Those 4 cupcakes are going to be down to 3 cupcakes, except on top of announcing that they're going to play 9 conference games, they're going to require every SEC team to play a Power 4 school or Notre Dame in the non-conference, which means they're going to play 10 games of quality opposition. Now, they'll still have 2 cupcakes, but that is only half as many cupcakes as some schools have been playing. I mean, some of the SEC schools have these in-state games with the ACC schools, right? There's Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech, South Carolina, Clemson, Kentucky, Louisville. But now everybody's going to be playing somebody. Everybody. And some have, right? Texas had opened up with Ohio State. Alabama scheduled Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin doesn't look very good now, but they didn't know that when they scheduled them. They'd been good. So, they're trying. What are you going to do? Sometimes you miss. Michigan, Oklahoma looked great, and now Oklahoma's been kind of mediocre here for a while, so that game loses. But Michigan tried, right? Some teams aren't trying in the Big Ten. So the Big Ten, who's been hollering, justifiably so, about the SEC's weak schedules, now they've kind of been leapfrogged here because the SEC matched their 9-game schedule, and now they're requiring everyone to play a 10th game. Now, in the Big Ten, some teams are trying. As I mentioned, Wisconsin was willing to schedule Alabama, and Michigan was really willing to schedule Oklahoma, and Texas was willing to schedule, Ohio State was willing to schedule Texas. So not everybody's running and hiding. However, looking at you, Penn State, nobody, and nobody. Indiana, nobody, and nobody. Rutgers, nobody, and nobody. Northwestern, nobody, and nobody. Now, Rutgers and Northwestern doesn't matter if you're trying to get the bowl eligibility, I suppose, whatever. But nonetheless, everybody, pick it up. And in the SEC they have. So congrats to the SEC. You did the right thing twice. As a matter of fact, I don't know that the Big 12 requires a 10th game. Again, many teams are doing it. Arizona State's playing Mississippi State. Utah is playing UCLA. BYU is playing Stanford. And when some of these games were scheduled, it wasn't that long ago, Stanford was really good, right? But some teams run and hide. What are you going to do? Well, require them to play 10 games. It is possible. And really, you got to figure that ESPN and Fox are leaning on them because nobody wants to watch these cupcakes. How many times can we watch the SEC beat up on the Citadel? Come on. And you can say, stash it on the SEC network or stash it on the Big Ten network. Yeah, who do you think owns those? ESPN and Fox. Well, the SEC's done the right thing. Good for them. All right, DJ and PK, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk BYU football with Greg Wrubell, the radio voice of the Cougars. And we're going to talk with Barry Tramel, who monitors all things Big 12 for us from Tulsa and Oklahoma City. So we got that coming up. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Time to welcome Greg Wrubell back to the show. BYU play-by-play voice. Greg, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Are you no longer greeted at the grocery store with who's the quarterback going to be? Who's the quarterback going to be? People opening random conversations with you around town now with something different, mixing it up for you?
It's about time.
You'd heard enough?
That's all I've talked about. It's all I've talked about for the last 2 months, it seems like.
Yeah, and here we are. And it is, to me, it was expected. I thought that was what it was going to be. I've been saying for weeks the other two were brought in to be to provide depth, and Bachmeier was going to be, if he's going to be the starter in 26, get him out there, especially now the way the schedule is. Back in the just a few years back, being an independent, that you were better off targeting Zach Wilson later in the season, but now it's flipped. The easier games are at the front, and the harder games go forward. And I think too, you look back to when some other freshmen played. I think the most important thing, and get your thought on this, is the state of the program. And I think the state of the program is such in a good spot that if you're ever going to do it now, because coaching staff is intact, veteran players, both sides of the ball, special teams have been such a huge difference maker. You got a phenomenal kicker and all that. So, yeah, do it now. So it's something that I sign off 100% on. And obviously, you have the chance to respond to that.
Yeah, it's a pretty good runway for the rookie. Let's start with the pedigree and just the fact that, pretty much every big-name school in the country wanted to crack at him when he came out of high school in Marietta. I mean, BYU doesn't always end up with that kind of quarterback. It just so happens they might end up with back-to-back quarterbacks like that with Ryder Lyons in the pipeline now. But this is a different level of talent that BYU's been asked and been able to develop now from the get-go. And so, just from that alone, you're dealing with a pretty impressive set of credentials before he's even played an FBS snap. And then when you add to it, the traits that helped convince the coaches he was the right guy for the job, including, his maturity and ability to synthesize the playbook quickly and lead a team even as a young kid. It's an exciting time for BYU, even though 2 months ago it didn't look so exciting with the loss of a senior starting quarterback. But if that's going to be your situation, it's about as good a resolution as you could hope for. Somebody with Bachmeier's talent level, the ability he's had to get in the mix quickly and accelerate sharply, and now the runway includes 3 games that. Not to look past anyone, but they're manageable, right? Portland State and Stanford and ECU. You'd like to think that there's enough around Bear to guide him through any growing pains he might experience here in the first month and still get some positive outcomes on the field. And before Big 12 play gets underway, and I'd certainly prefer that someone like Bear, have some experience before being dropped, say, into the middle of the Big 12 wars in October. Yeah. And so, there are a lot of reasons to like the way the decision was resolved by Coach Kalani and Aaron Roderick and ultimately the staff along with Bear, showing that he could do it on the field. They weren't trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes in their team room. They weren't trying to shoehorn this kid into a spot. He went out day to day and showed why he was the right choice.
So with that in mind, and knowing quarterback is the most important position in team sports, rather than ask you, what you think the team's going to do and how many games they're going to win, if everything goes right, what's the ceiling? If lots goes wrong, what is the floor?
Well, I would hope the floor is still postseason play. I really do think that there's enough around this team, besides the quarterback position, to get BYU back into postseason play. But that would be a floor for me. I think the ceiling could be an expectation that they find themselves in the same vicinity as they did last year, contending for a Big 12 regular season championship and a spot in the title game in Arlington. Last year's team wasn't too highly thought of when the year began, and by the end of it, there they were with the best record in the Big 12 and in conference play, losing out on a tiebreaker. The level of quarterback play they got that year was certainly adequate. It wasn't exceptional, but it was certainly adequate. The places that were exceptional were defense and special teams, and a lot of those expectations can be, I think, held over from one season to the next. I think BYU's got a lot of room to improve with its offensive categories from last season to this. Less room to improve with defense and special teams. They were already operating at a pretty high level. I think if the offense can simply come up to where the defense and special teams were performing last year, BYU can have another exceptional season. And I really do think that Bear Bachmeier unlocks some interesting potentials at quarterback. He's a pretty impressive, physical piece of this puzzle back there. And if he can stay healthy and be like Jake was last year, let's not overlook the fact that Jake Retzloff was an every game starter for BYU. those kinds of seasons have been few and far between recently, where your number one quarterback is a guy 12, 13 weeks. That doesn't often happen. But if it happens with BYU and Bear Bachmeier this year, I think good things can happen.
How much do you think the Big 12 membership has been a difference maker for BYU and not just football?
I think it was maybe the second major step in the process of putting BYU to where it is right now, that is, as a nationally relevant or prominent player in multiple sports. I think actually independence was step one. And you might look at independence, or some might see it as a bit of a drawback period, but I really think it was a pretty brave and forward-thinking move at the time. There were things within independence that really helped BYU be ready for Big 12 play. The national visibility they maintained with their ESPN contract, the ability they had to craft a schedule, including a lot of power conference opponents, was another big element in having them be ready to compete as a Big 12 player. And so I think independence is step one, and I think Big 12 membership is step two, and I think step three now is the new set of rules regarding resources, NIL, and revenue sharing we're now in. BYU's been able to meet the task in all three phases. They haven't really fallen down on any one of those three steps I just mentioned, and now they're operating on a level playing field, in some instances, maybe a superior playing field in some ways, and can expect to be competitive as long as they keep attracting the right people for the programs and the institution. They can expect this to be a period of prosperity.
I do believe the SEC and Big Ten spend a lot of time trying to send the message, we are the only legitimate college football leagues, the rest of you suck. And I do think that message is sticking to a certain degree. I can't help but notice that in both the coaches and media polls, there's only one Big 12 team, Arizona State, who got the votes to be in playoff territory. And for everybody else, it's prove it. Do you feel like even though the brand has changed to the Big 12, that the local teams are in a better place? Or does it feel like they're constantly in the best of the prove it leagues, no matter what league they're in, no matter what decade we're talking about? Because you and I and PK have all been around long enough to talk about at least 4 decades. Pretty deeply. Yeah,
I still think power conference football resonates, and yes, I mean the gap or the chasm, is projected to be widening, primarily because of the constant battering of the PR machine on behalf of those two conferences. But I still think that power conference football is something separate from the rest of the country, and we're seeing it, and we'll continue to see it in dramatic fashion. I mean, G6 teams are becoming, in some instances, feeder programs for the big clubs, and it'll be rare that you see a 4-year senior All-American type player come out of G6 programs in the future. They simply won't last that long there. If you're that good, you'll be gone. It's also rare that a team would have to rely on a true freshman quarterback to open a season at a power conference level, because power conference programs are going to stack their teams with junior and senior quarterbacks and just keep that flywheel rotating year to year through the portal. They wouldn't need to drop down and have to use a freshman like BYU is doing. Now, BYU happens to be, in a best case scenario, considering the fact they got a guy like Bear Bachmeier, but that's not going to be the norm at a power conference program. All of that being said, we're probably not done with what power conference membership is going to look like over the next decade. But I think BYU, if there are more shifts to come, is as positively positioned as it ever has been to be included in whatever the highest level of football is. Sure, the Big Ten and the SEC would like to allocate themselves X number of spots for a CFP every year, but they were also allocating multiple spots to the ACC and the Big 12. And if you were to believe, the coaches who believe that only one Big 12 team is playoff worthy, well, getting at least 2 every year would be something more than the Big 12 is guaranteed of right now. We all know that Brett Yormark's counter to it, and I probably do side with him, is that, let's earn it on the field and take as many spots as we can. But I don't think that the Big 12 and the ACC or its best teams are in danger of falling into some, nether region or some middle tier that's something lower than power conference football. I even if there is a shift, and even if there are teams to be poached and a bigger grouping made of power conference programs, I think BYU is positioned to be included in whatever that next amalgamation looks like.
You're a BYU lifer and can speak to this about how they would try to do more with less, that type of thing, and talking to coaches who'd come and gone, and the resources that were available there versus what BYU was substantially different. Now you look at the programs, particularly the two major sports in basketball and football, and man, they're right there. And I don't think they should make any apologies for it. I know that's been somewhat of a conversation piece. You know, they're in it to win it, and they're going to pay the going rate essentially. But, you know, from my time being in here to see where they are to where they are now, particularly with basketball, obviously, it sort of blows me away. And what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's actually kind of nice to be shedding the label of, you know, scrappy underdog, if you will.
Yeah.
And you know, because I do think that, you know, BYU was probably as, you know, most closely approximated a power conference program without the label for, you know, a pretty long time. It just so happens now that you know, they are planning to and have the resources to be competitive in an era where everybody is expected to contribute, you know, resources at a very high level. It's not mandatory. Not everybody has to reach this revenue sharing plateau, but BYU certainly plans to and have the resources to do. And they're also getting a lot. I mean, they've also succeeded in the first couple of years of the Big 12 without getting a full share, right? I mean, they've also been operating at something less than a full tank, and now that changes as well. So I think it's just kind of fortuitous. Everything kind of happened in a span of 3 or 4 or 5 years that allowed BYU to go from, you know, the plucky would-be to now a member of the club and has the ability and the resources to stay there. I don't think you're ever going to see BYU throw out the tenets of its mission or its existence at a win-all-costs scenario. There's always going to have to be the question of fit. It would be unwise to not stick to that, and I think they are sticking to that. I think even one and dones that might come through campus are going to come and leave with a positive experience of their time at BYU. Yegor Demon, AJ DeBonsa, they may not be long-term residents of campus, but I think they're going to leave with something that they can share with others that's very positive. I think we've already seen that with Yegor. Even Jake, you know, his time at BYU was relatively brief, and the way he left, nobody would argue was a positive thing, and yet he has nothing but positive things to say about his time at BYU, the people, the coaches, the community, the way he was treated. And that was a guy that could have reasons to kind of put up blinders and say, I'm not going to address that part of my career or that place or whatever the case may be. But that's not what you heard from him. And so I think as long as BYU is still attracting and bringing in those kinds of people who may not be members of the sponsoring faith, you can, I think, have your cake and eat it too at BYU in this new era. And that's what I hope to see over the years to come.
A lot of fans have a lot of different opinions on what should happen with the football stadium. Some think just stay the way it is. It's going great. Others would like to see the corners filled in, maybe with premium seats. Maybe you have to redo the ends to do that. Talk about a new stadium at some point on the old Provo High campus, but now there's other plans for that maybe as well. What is the best case scenario for a football facility to keep BYU in as good a position as possible from the facilities point of view?
Oh, I really haven't had this be a top-of-mind thing personally, but I think there are some cosmetic things that is probably that are probably due. I don't know. Maybe you'd want to sell the stadium out. Literally, like have it be sold out for years and years and years in a row before you consider that to be an essential thing relative to expansion we're talking about. But in terms of cosmetics and aesthetics, and some renovations or major touch-ups, yeah, I think we're probably due. I came to BYU in 1984, and I believe it was 82 when the end zones were finally constructed. So it's been 40-plus years since the last major addition to the stadium. The press box was also new at that time, the expanded press box. So, yeah, if you go 40 years, and there have been some important hosting improvements made in recent years in the way the seating's configured and special premium hospitality areas for corporate sponsors and things like that. That's not an unimportant thing at all. But I think, you could look at probably, giving yourself a bit of an updated look without having to, totally start from scratch and build a new stadium. But I guess I haven't, thought that this is just too small of a building now. Maybe you'd want to see it, packed to the gills for a few years before you say it really has to be expanded. That said, I think the atmosphere in that building is second to none when that place is full and rocking. And I don't think it lacks for anything when you see what you see on a late Friday or Saturday night.
Do you know anyone who celebrates their birthday and wedding anniversary on the same day?
Just a select few of us who want to take out the hassle of having to remember your anniversary every year.
Did you plan that?
It was pretty coincidental, actually. It just turned out that way. It was literally the last Saturday before I was going to have to go back to school at BYU, and it just worked out that was going to be the best date. And so I got married on my birthday.
And you don't get cheated, though. You don't feel like you get ripped off.
No. It's just a day replete with joy and frivolity.
I know when she said replete, it was going to be a big finish. All right, Greg, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for joining us and talking a little Cougar football.
You bet. And not that women ever forget their spouse's birthdays, but now she has no excuse to ever forget my birthday.
There you
so
go.
It kind of goes both ways.
Right,
yeah. Guys, always a pleasure. Thank you.
There's Greg Wrubell talking a little college football. A reminder, join Hans and Scotty G today from noon to 3 at RGS Exteriors, 4235 Farm Road in West Jordan. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Barry Tramel talking Big 12 football next. DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Barry Tramel is back with us once again, sports columnist for the Tulsa World, a guy who has been tracking the Big 12 in all its various forms for decades. Barry, good morning.
How's things going, guys? We got game week.
We're so ready. Kick it off. Let's go. K-State, Iowa State. Let's make it happen.
What a world. A guy in Oklahoma talking to guys in Utah about football teams from Iowa and Kansas playing in Dublin. It's quite a world we live in.
Yeah, the big news here for us locally is that BYU is going to go with the freshman Bear Bachmeier. And you talk about craziness in the world. I don't think this will ever happen again in the history of sports. It certainly has never happened, and maybe it'll happen at some point. This kid, he's from the Southern California area, right? Family, you heard of Hank Bachmeier, played for Boise and then a couple other schools, right? So, and his brother was a receiver at Stanford. So he graduates high school early last year, and he goes to Stanford to join his brother, participates in spring ball. Troy Taylor, who was the OC here for a couple years and did a great job with Sac State, gets a Stanford job. He has issues there. Andrew Luck comes in, fires him last March, and then the Bachmeier brothers, led by Bear, transfer to BYU, and so then he wins the starting job. So he participates as a freshman in spring ball for Stanford and then starts his first day of school in Provo, and he'll be the starting quarterback. That's sort of amazing when you think about the rules and all with the eligibility now. But my thought for you was, we're looking for freshmen, first-year freshmen, not redshirt, but first-year freshmen who have been in the program. In this case, he didn't graduate early to go to BYU. He graduated early to go to Stanford, so he's only been on campus for a few weeks. Have you seen anybody that comes to mind? Because there was a kid that I covered his high school in California before I moved up here, Banning High School in Wilmington, California. A kid named Holloway who led the Sooners, and he was a freshman, and it was a option quarterback. I think, Aikman broke his leg or something. He comes in. Anything come to mind as a first-year freshman having a level of success? Because there seems to be that there's such trepidation going in that direction.
Well, Trevor Lawrence was great at Clemson. Jamel Holloway did quarterback Oklahoma to the national title. He took over, game 3.5, so fourth game. So he started whatever it be, 8 games that year. Did great. I'm actually going to be me and Jamel are doing a panel together on the day before the OU Texas game.
Oh, interesting.
Next in October. So I'll see Jamel soon. Every once in a while you see guys, of course I got the Oklahoma orientation here, but, Baker Mayfield went to Lubbock without a scholarship and ended up starting the season opener, which was just crazy. And then made 5 or 6 starts, and that year got in Cliff Kingsbury's doghouse and transferred to Oklahoma. But it's very rare. We've seen the Nebraska kid, Raiola, come in and play and did okay. He's ballyhooed quarterback. It's not ideal, and when it does work these days, it needs to be, you would think, one of those January enrollees,
right? Which
is not Jamel Holloway, by the way. Nobody even thought about somebody skipping your second half of your senior year of high school to get a jump start on college 40 years ago. But my question would be, how much experience, knowledge, whatever, did Bachmeier get at Stanford? Is he back to zero, or is it actually, didn't hurt that he did spend that year at Stanford?
I think it would have helped him. They said in his spring ball that he was competing. And, of course, BYU's angle is that he would have won the job, so he would have been starting for Stanford this year as a first-year freshman instead of BYU if he hadn't transferred.
Yeah, and, of course, the fun part, I believe the Cougars and the Cardinal play this year, don't they?
They do.
Well, there you go. So that's fun. It's a crazy world, but I think freshman quarterbacks are more ready to play than ever before, because most of them, if they come from places like California and Texas and the South or wherever, they've been playing all year round in the 7-on-7 stuff, and most of the high school coaching is better than it's ever been in terms of scheme and those kinds of things. So I think there's reason for optimism on a freshman, unlike ever how many decades ago. So I'm not writing off BYU just because of the quarterback situation. Sure, Retzloff would be better off. Be better off with Retzloff still around, but you make the best of it. And this is a kid that's clearly, I think, he's been around big time college football with his brothers and sort of knows the landscape. So there's things to like or be optimistic about the whole thing. So I wish him well. I hope he does well for the BYUs.
CBS Sports has 7 writers, and they all ranked the Big 12 teams 1 through 16. It's like there's 3 groups. There's a top 7, and Utah and Texas Tech both got 4 of the 7, picked them to go to the conference title game. And then there's BYU and Kansas kind of sitting in the A9 spots, and then there's 7 teams at the bottom, and there's very little variation from that. You think these preseason predictions are any better this year than they were last year? Does the media have to get something right at some point, or is there any point in even reading this stuff?
I actually think we might be better at it now, because we're learning each other. If you think about it, the media caught a little bit too much flack. You're throwing together a brand new conference. I mean, last 2024 Big 12 included 8 teams, 8 schools that weren't in the league in 2022, just 2 years before. I mean, it was in a lot of ways, it was a brand new league, and it's not like it was Iowa and Iowa State, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, or TCU and Baylor all of a sudden come together. You're bringing in 2 teams from the Eastern time zone, Cincinnati and UCF. You're bringing in 5 from the Rocky Mountain region. I mean, it's just all of a sudden people get thrown into a room together, and just all of a sudden have to start getting along and learn each other. So this seemed to, if you're ever going to have an upside down forecast, which is what the Big 12's had last year, and little a bit like that in 23. That was the time to do it. So I think we'll probably have a little more insight into each other, and maybe the picks are going to be okay. I still think a team, because of the portal, because of the culture in college football, I still think a team can come from far back of the pack. I still think, a BYU, a Colorado, a Cincinnati, whoever. I mean, nobody saw Arizona State coming last year, so anybody there. Somebody could still surprise us. But I think it's more likely that a team like TCU, who's in that upper tier you're talking about, but is not considered really a contender, I think somebody like that could still make it to Arlington and see what happens when they get there.
Yeah, I think that clearly the Utah love is a couple of reasons. Kyle treats everybody like he's their buddy, and I, as a former print guy for 23 years, I believe deep down we're supposed to be curmudgeons, but we also want to be loved. And if somebody treats you well, you're going to be inclined to favor them to an extent. And, they have the rep. And then also, too, this quarterback Dampier, and this is where I'm going with it. My thought for you is that you've been around this game for a long time. I'm not that concerned that he can make the adjustment. I realize he played at New Mexico and the Mountain West is a lower level, but just because a player is playing in a lower level doesn't necessarily mean he is a lower level player. We can look at Scattaboo last year. He comes up from the Big Sky and then just goes crazy. So I don't really have concern about moving up a so-called level. It's more about, is he a dynamic player? And I think this Dampier is a dynamic player. What do you think about a player moving up? Is that a concern for you? Because it isn't for me.
Well, I can tell you this. The Oklahoma Sooner fan base hopes that theory is a nonsense, because they got a guy that they're clearing ground for another Heisman Trophy statue for John Mateer,
right,
who played at Washington State last year, which was not Washington State of the Pac-12.
No,
he played 3 games that really matter. I mean, against elite. Not elite, against power conference type competition, and that's counting. I counted Boise and Texas Tech and Washington, I think, were the 3. So clearly, guys can move up and do well. My only question about Dampier is not how he'll adjust to the competition. He just had so many dang turnovers last year. I think it's touchdowns and interceptions were the same.
They were 12 and 12.
So he's got to clear that up, or Kyle Whittingham's friends are going to be disappointed. So I just, but I do like the dynamic part of that, and coming with his offensive coordinator. It's the same story at Oklahoma, where Washington State's coordinator came to OU.
Yeah.
So that's probably a winning. I think that's probably a winning recipe if you can do that. So I think that does bode well for Utah. And I think the Utes are going to bounce back. And, they were just so bad on offense. They were a little bit like, Oklahoma last year had a really good defense, but the offense just stunk so bad that they had a mediocre year. So I assume Utah is able to fix that. But it's, the funny thing about the Big 12 football is I have a theory that these super conferences that we got now, everybody's got 16 teams or more. Just the schedule is going to be the biggest determinant on who's going to win. Penn State made the Big Ten title game only because they had an easier schedule. Texas made the SEC title game only because they had an easier schedule. And the problem you have in the Big 12 is you don't know who's going to be good, so you don't know who has the easy schedule.
Right, yeah.
And if we knew that right now, we could probably pick the winners. If we knew not where they're going to finish, but are they just going to be, pretty good? And so it's a fun league. Man, do I think it's fun. And I think I'm just so happy for the Big 12 getting this K-State Iowa State game to launch it. I think it's a great situation for the Big 12 to have that platform to start the season.
Barry, you've said that before about the schedule, and I thought that in the Pac-12 years that the two teams you missed were a big deal. I remember when they went in, Chris Hill brought it up almost immediately. So I think people inside the league were talking about it as an important deal, and I think it's only become more important as the leagues have gotten bigger. On paper, it looks like the Utes have one of the tougher schedules. I looked this up because I knew you were coming on, and I thought we were going to end up talking about this. 6 of their 9 games are against teams that are perceived to be the top half of the league. Baylor catches a break with only 4. Let's assume that all these assumptions about these teams are right. Now we got double levels of assumptions, so we're probably way off in the weeds. Do you think Baylor's good enough if they catch some breaks that Baylor can win it?
Well, fortuitous question on your part. I actually ran the schedule on paper, and I'm doing my Big 12 predictions, writing it today, and I just simulated the schedule. Now, I'm not pretending I ran 10,000 computer models. I just, Utah, BYU, who's going to win that game? And I just picked one to win. And then I went back and did the standings, and I got Baylor and Tech in the title game, and clearly it's Baylor because I think the Bears do have the easier schedule. Now, in November, for all we know, they're going to have the toughest schedule and be 4-5, and
right,
lost to the 5 top teams in the league. But the way it looks, Baylor does have a pretty good team and a pretty good schedule. So I think they are a dark horse, or maybe not even shouldn't be a dark horse, but I do think they're a really interesting team to follow because, they were the hottest team in the league at the end. They didn't get off to a very good start. And then they saw Robertson really got going. So I think that's a team to watch out for. Dave Aranda, is a defensive coach, and he's going back and he's calling his own defense now again. And he's got a good quarterback situation, good offensive coordinator, and Jake Spavital. So I like Baylor to make it to Arlington. I think that's who I'm picking to make it to Arlington.
And who are they going to play?
I had Tech there. I just enjoy throwing somebody, and then part of it was Tech's schedule too, if I remember right. Tech's schedule didn't seem too onerous. But the conference was exactly like it was last year. There's a couple teams tied at 7-2, and then there's like 4 or 5 at 6-3, and I think that's what we're going to have.
Yeah,
and it's going to be sad. It's going to be sad for the Big 12 when we get around to picking the college football playoff because they're going to do the same thing they did last year, and they'll just have one team, and they'll be seated low, and until somebody rises up and starts dominating the conference, this blockheaded committee we've got will just seat them ever how they want to. I didn't know what you guys thought, but when we got that kooky idea of 2018 Big Ten idea for the playoff, I didn't think it was absolutely silly. When I saw that it was 7-7, 5-5, I thought, you know what, that's a pretty good deal for the Big 12.
Oh, for sure.
They might ought to look at that and see if they can get see what else they can get at the bargaining table. Can they get some assurances about seeds and make sure they're not all seeded in the 20s? But if you told me the Big 12 could get 7-7, 5-5, I think I'd switch to that format.
That's the bus you'd hop on right there.
Yeah. So
I got to admit, I thought 28 was a bit much, but 24 didn't totally surprise me because it mimics what's happened at some of the other divisions where they've had playoffs for a long time. And I do think that the top 4 or 5 teams in college football tend to pull away from the rest of them. So if you had a playoff where you could win a game or two, you could build some status by winning games that are roughly comparable before you run into one of the big dogs who has all the built-in advantages. They really do.
Yeah.
They really do. And
people say, people are always saying, why do we need 20 teams, 24 teams? There's only 8 teams that can win the title. But that's no reason to keep people out of the playoff, I don't think. I mean, Arizona State last year, I don't think Arizona State could have won the national title. But they dang sure could have beat Texas and almost did. And if they had won that game, it would have done wonders for Arizona State, and it would have done wonders for the Big 12. So I think there's all kinds of good that can come out of making the playoff and winning a game or so when you get there. I'm with you. Absolutely.
Are you in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, Barry?
I am in the Oklahoma Journalism Hall of Fame.
And that's different than the Oklahoma Hall of Fame?
Yeah. We got the Journalism Hall of Fame, we got the Sports Hall of Fame, and we got the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, which is really sort of the Highfalutin Society Hall of Fame. So my chances of there are nil. Actually, I got one goal left in life, and that's to make the Norman High School Hall of Fame. I think there's been a couple of sports people make it. So my life will be complete if I could get in there. But I don't have a lot of they got mad didn't get mad at me, but they got mad at somebody. They took me off the voting panel for the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. So when they remove you from that, your chances of getting in that are not very high. So, I'm also working on my my own family Hall of Fame. I got my 3 granddaughters are pretty high on me. I took 2 of them to school today, 10th grader, 9th grader. And they've decided to go to different high schools, so I get to make 2 high school run every morning. Oh, man. Which that makes it awfully convenient because you get to see everybody in town, basically. So,
nice.
So that's about where I'm at, but no, I'm having a heck of a time. I'm enjoying the heck out of life.
Because I just saw the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, and they're the class of 25. One of them is Ronnie Dunn. And I know you're not a country guy, but that's the Brooks and Dunn. And I'm thinking, he should have been in way long ago. And he's going in with Sam Presti, and they just won, so I get that. But, man, that's a tough one if you're putting in one of the Brooks and Dunn guys because he's got the connection there. And it seems like something he should have been in a long time ago.
Yeah, like I said, it's mainly for rich people. Is what it really is. It's not. I shouldn't say this because the more I talk, the less chance I have of making it in these Halls of Fame. But it's really not. It's sort of a brother-in-law type situation, I think. So, I think we put Kevin Durant in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame the year before his contract was up. And I think they did it just to say, hey, you're one of us. You're part of us.
Yeah.
And then he took his Oklahoma Hall of Fame medallion and went to Golden State. So, but it's a Ronnie Dunn, no doubt about it. Brooks and Dunn, big deal. He's, we got a lot of country singers. We're running thick on.
Oh, it's Hobie Keith, Carrie Underwood, Vince Gill. Yeah.
Yeah, Garth Brooks. Reba McEntire.
Yeah.
First time I ever saw Reba McEntire, I was 18 years old, and I covered the Oklahoma-Nebraska game. And there was this short little gal. She's a little older than me, so she'd have been in her 20s. A short little gal in the press box before the game, and I thought, who's this gal? And then later they take her out, and she sings the national anthem, and I never heard of her. And of course, I'm not too big into country music. But the next thing I know, she's the biggest thing in Nashville. So I said, that was my best national anthem story until I covered the 23 OU BYU game in Provo. And they trot out Marie Osmond for the national anthem. And I told everybody in the press row, I said, everybody straighten up. This is big time here, guys, with Marie Osmond singing the national anthem. I don't want any knuckleheads talking during this. So,
and they're obviously they're from Utah. And Donnie, her brother, is a sports fan. And a while back, he tweeted at me to not take any crap from DJ because DJ was giving me crap. So he's a listener to our show.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I told the guys, Jonathan and all those guys in the BYU media relations, I said, you guys make my day. 'Cause, when I was 15 years old, I was I was doing AP poll stuff and college football. I knew everything about college football. But I also had like my own little, female poll, shall we say. And I don't know if Marie Osmond was number one, but she was in the top 5. I can promise you.
Oh, easily, Barry, easily. No question.
I can promise you.
Barry Tramel, Celebrity Crushes. Next. Stay with us.
And she's one of her best buddies is Robbie Bosco, the old BYU quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been jealous of Robbie for that for years.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Barry, on that note, we will let you go. Straighten up, knuckleheads. This is big time. That's going to stay with me for a while. Good work, Barry.
All right, guys. See you later.
There's Barry Tramel. A reminder, DJ and PK proudly presented by our title sponsor, Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines next.